concerned. Well, I can tell you they're both very, very passionate about this topic. And I actually also spoke to Maureen Maloney. She is chairing a new committee called Fair and Secure Massachusetts, which filed for that repeal a couple of weeks back. And when I spoke to her, she told me that it is not about politics. For her, this repeal has a much more personal meaning.
I miss everything about him every day.
It's been almost a decade since Maureen Maloney laid her son Matthew to rest.
Matthew was 23 years old. He graduated from Framingham State University. Matthew was so full of life. Everybody was his friend. Everybody knew him and loved him.
Prosecutors trying to convince the judge this is much more than a negligent homicide.
Matthew's life was cut short when, according to authorities, an undocumented immigrant was driving under the influence, rolled through a stop sign and struck Matthew's motorcycle, dragging him a quarter mile to his death.
After my son's death, I did get involved with illegal immigration, opposing illegal immigration.
My name is Maureen Maloney.
So this was like a natural next step for me to get involved with this when the law was passed to provide a driver's license to people in the country illegally.
The item stands despite the objection of His Excellency the Governor.
Maloney is leading the Fair and Secure Massachusetts Committee and filed paperwork to begin the process of putting a question on November's ballot that would ask voters to repeal the measure.
I think Governor Baker was listening to the residents of Massachusetts.
But proponents argue that the Work and Family Mobility Act will improve public safety and relieve fears of being revealed as undocumented. Celebrating after state lawmakers overrode Governor Baker's veto of the bill.
Everybody was hugging each other because they knew all the sacrifices that they had to make.
Heidi, who asked that we not include her last name, is a volunteer organizer with Movimiento Cosecha, a pro-immigrant organization, and would benefit from the law if it stands.
Not only from having a driver license, but not having any protections at work, from being left ignored during the pandemic, right? And they were the essential workers and the workers at the front lines, right, serving the communities. And I think that it shows, right, the lack of connection that they have with our people.
I'm not saying that all people in the country illegally are bad people. We have a legal process for coming to this country, and it's very unfair to those who are doing it the right way.
To put the question on whether the law should be repealed on the November ballot, petitioners will need to collect at least 40,000 signatures from registered voters in less than 3 months. Heidi says she hopes the divisiveness in her state will be addressed.
Because I do believe that we need to build a multiracial community that's ready to fight back and build a better world that is accessible and equitable for all of us.
I checked with the committee yesterday. They actually got the green light from the Secretary of State to start collecting those signatures, and they have until August 24th to do so. If this repeal fails, well, that means that undocumented immigrants in the state of Massachusetts would be able to get driver licenses on July 1st, 2023.
He said that's the goal of this program, support the community and the officers. And they told me at times having someone that isn't in a police attire at those calls has even de-escalated the situation and saved lives.
Grace, has this program impacted the number of arrests ultimately made?
Yes, it has. So the numbers speak volumes. Just at Framingham Police Department last year, out of the 488 people referred to the co-response program, 94% didn't result in an individual being placed under custody. Furthermore, 121 people avoided hospitalization because the clinician offered alternative support on the scene. The chief says he stands by the Framingham program, which he points out hasn't been easy at times, and it's involved changing the culture of the department, but he believes it could help how policing is done across the country. The bill was introduced by Representative Geraldo Reyes. He says Latinx isn't a Spanish word, often misused and offensive to the Hispanic population. But on the other hand, LGBTQ activists are trying to shift the conversation. They want to replace the term Latinx to Latine, a word that it's already used in Latin America by people who do not identify with a specific gender.
We've been talking about this for years. I've heard former Representative Vargas speaking about this at length. I hear Representative Minnie Gonzalez speaking about this at length. It's the day has come.
Representative Geraldo Reyes, along with 4 other Hispanic Democrats, introduced a bill last month in Connecticut to ban the term Latinx from the state's official language.
Let's eliminate it from government and higher educational levels.
The move comes after Governor Huckabee of Arkansas banned it on her first day in office. Representative Reyes says the term is often misused.
People that are not even Hispanic at all come and just throw the term Latinx around because they sound woke or they sound like they want to be hip.
According to a survey in 2019, 76% of Latino adults had not heard of the term Latinx, and only 3% used it.
The Spanish language is over 1,500 years old. It's a beautiful language. It cannot be altered and changed just to fit a narrative.
Language purity is one thing, but legal protections enshrined in government documents is important.
Rafael Feliciano, an activist for Waterbury LGBT Pride, says inclusive terms allow his community to feel identified and protected.
I want to steer away from the very reductive and divisive down South Arkansas law that is just very homophobic and transphobic.
That is why he's trying to shift the conversation. Instead of banning the term Latinx, he wants to replace it.
I used to be a big proponent of Latinx. I've transitioned to Latine with an E at the end of it.
Latine is a word that comes from Spanish-speaking countries in Central and South America. The term is also used to remove gender with neutral Spanish letter E, which can already be found in words like estudiante, which means student in English.
And it's my job as an activist from this city who identifies as Latine, not Latinx, Latine now, to go to the state capitol and let these 5 folks know, hey, we have a word that defines us, that comes from us, viene de nosotros.
On the other hand, Representative Reyes says there is already a gender-neutral term in Spanish.
To anybody who doesn't believe they're Latino or Latina, they can use the word Latin, or they can use Latino, which is neutral gender for everything.
It only takes really a quick search in social media networks like Facebook to find dozens of posts of people who are looking for sponsorship and others that offer it. But that offer, unfortunately, comes tied to some type of monetary exchange. We actually spoke to a man in Cuba who'd like to remain anonymous. He says he saw one of these posts online and reached out. The sound you're about to hear is in Spanish, but we've translated it for you. Take a look.
Que yo era uno de los primeros que había contactado y me iban a tener en cuenta. Que el trámite salía en $5,000. Que la abogada cobraba $2,500 por meter el trámite, ¿ves? Y los otros $2,500 se pagaban cuando ya estuviera ya el trámite aprobado en Estados Unidos. Un familiar mío se lo entregó. Yo me dijo, hey, esto parece todo legal, compadre, todo bien, hasta los días de hoy.
He also tells us he sold most of his belongings to gather the money, and after it was delivered, his number was blocked and he never got a hold of that scammer again.
Grace, is there any scenario where this sort of exchange of money is legal or allowed by U.S. Customs and Immigration?
So it is not allowed at all, according to their website, uscis.gov. They call this type of practice misleading offers of support, and they warn of individuals attempting to contact people online or through social media accounts. According to Representative Enrique Sanchez, the move would give a say to undocumented immigrants who can't participate in certain decisions being made in the city or town they live in, such as school board or city council. But not everyone is on board with this idea. Democratic State Representative Enrique Sanchez introduced a bill earlier this month that would authorize undocumented immigrants to vote in municipal elections.
Anything, whether it's an ordinance that's passing, a bond, city council stuff, mayor stuff.
He states that undocumented residents would need a driver's license or taxpayer ID, the latter usually issued to those that don't have social security numbers, in order to vote.
They just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and eventually it's going to be your vote isn't going to count.
Terry Gorman, the president and executive director of Rhode Island for Immigration Law Enforcement, says he's against the bill.
Because there are going to be so many illegal aliens in the state of Rhode Island that would be eligible to vote in local elections.
According to Representative Sanchez, the bill will allow undocumented residents to have a say on issues that impact them directly. He also believes this will benefit local communities long term.
People who are frustrated with this, well, hey, listen, this is an opportunity for us to generate more income, more revenue, in our communities. This is an opportunity to finance fixing our roads, our communities.
If the bill passes, it would give local communities the option to pass an ordinance that would allow non-citizens to vote in municipal elections. Undocumented residents wouldn't be able to vote in state or federal elections.
Why should we do anything to help an illegal alien? They broke the law to come in here, and I believe this law, if they look it up, I think it's against the state constitution. The Article 2 of the Constitution says you have to be a citizen of the state of Rhode Island in order to vote.
And Representative Sanchez says he doesn't believe an amendment would be needed in the state's constitution for undocumented citizens to vote in a local election. We know now the bill has been forwarded to the House Elections Committee.
My parents were law enforcement. My father was a deputy sheriff and my mother was a police officer.
Paula Poltanovich says her parents, Joan and Nicholas, were known in their community for the way they helped those in need. And even after death, they wanted to donate their bodies to medical research.
They've always wanted to donate back to science to help the students to find and cure diseases.
She says she was shocked to find out someone had possibly tampered with her father's remains.
Never in my life would expect this to happen.
What do you have to say about these charges?
Last month, Cedric Lodge, the former Harvard Medical School's morgue manager, was arrested. He and his wife, Denise Lodge, are facing criminal charges after an FBI investigation into the trafficking of more than 400 human remains. According to court documents from 2018 to 2022, Lodge allegedly stole body parts, brought them to his home, and sold them to buyers in other states. NBC News reached out to the Lodge's lawyer, but they didn't respond to our request for comment. According to the FBI, 6 additional people from Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Massachusetts, and Arkansas are connected and currently face charges on this case. Last week, Lodge and the other defendants pleaded not guilty in a federal court in Pennsylvania.
It is grotesque.
Last month, Paula says she received this letter from Harvard Medical School informing her dad could be one of the people whose body was tampered with. She's now filed a lawsuit against Lodge and Harvard Medical School for emotional distress.
It's shocking to me that there could be so many victims over the course of 5 years. And where was the oversight? Where were the people questioning what was happening with these bodies?
More than 300 families also filed a class action lawsuit against Harvard Medical School, citing their bodies had been unlawfully mishandled, stolen, and sold. In a statement, Harvard Medical School says in part, quote, "We are so very sorry for the pain this news will cause for our anatomical donors' families and loved ones," and adding that Lodge was terminated on May 6th and that they couldn't comment any further on any pending litigation.
And now we have to go through this ourselves all over again, wondering what part of my dad's gone. If I have dad's ashes, it's terrible.
Paula's mother passed away earlier this year. The family tells us her body was not tampered with and that Harvard Medical School will return her remains back to the family and has even offered to pay for the funeral services.